Hi, everybody. Welcome to Radical Age Reversal. I'm Carrie Donegan, your host, and today we're continuing in the book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. Let us first bring in our Win-Win Women audience. Hi, Win-Win Women audience. Welcome to Radical Age Reversal. Again, I'm Carrie Donegan, and we are here to continue on our journey in the book, Eat to Beat Your Diet. And I hope you are getting a lot out of this. So today's episode is going to be a little bit different because he is making a case in the next few pages for the Mediterranean diet, or as he calls it, the Mediterasian diet. And so last week he set up the situation, he defined the parameters, and today, in the next few pages, what he does, and we're starting on page 109 for those of you who are following along. Um, he starts in the second paragraph doing some studies about different types of diets and who's healthy and who's not healthy. Now, I think in recent years, we've heard a lot about the Mediterranean diet. We've heard a lot about blue zones, and there's been lots of books written about them. We've also heard a lot about, different longevity pockets in the world. And it begs the question for me, are there healthier places to live in the world? Were they always the healthiest place to live in the world? Is it that the modern industrial age has done things to break down our soil, to deplete our foods of certain nutrients, to add chemicals to the foods that have made us sick? Like, what exactly is going on, and why are people, even in the modern era, living healthier, longer lives than other people? And I think there's a few conclusions that we probably don't need a study for, but there are plenty of studies out there that can prove this. But the more processed your foods are, and the further away they are from just being whole foods, is definitely going to be a factor. The number of chemicals in your food is going to be a factor. I mean, if you think about it, we never grew chemicals, we didn't raise chemicals, we added chemicals, and we probably did it for a good reason. Now, I always like to look at human beings as being a force for good. Now, some people may be looking at the situation and say it was some great conspiracy theory, that they had this plan all along. They were going to destroy the food system. They were going to create a monopoly. They were going to destroy all of our seeds, and they were going to add all these chemicals. And maybe that's where things are right now. But I don't believe it started out that way. I believe that there were people in the scientific community who had goodwill and good intention, and they thought that they needed to find a solution to starvation and hunger in the world. That there were famines, that there were blights, that there were all of these natural disasters that would lead to huge amounts of crops being wiped out and many, many people starving. And even in the world today, there are a lot of people who have not enough food to eat on a daily basis, especially children. So to accuse or to um, vilify the food industry completely, I think is unfair. And, just like everything else, very few things in life are black and white. I definitely think it's an unfair statement. But more than that, I think it's really important for us to figure out, what do we do now? Now that we have what we have. And I have to say, and I don't want this to be a political podcast in any way, shape, or form, but I think the fact that our government now is looking into the number of chemicals that we allowed in our food and really look at the effects they've had and really look at, potential causes for rises in diseases and conditions that we're seeing that are running rampant, like autism, like cancers, like autoimmune diseases, that is there a correlation or even more a causation between the foods that we eat, the amount of food that we eat, the way we eat our food, and the outcome? I think it's a worthwhile question. And you know what? We've had these chemicals in the food since the 1970s. So I predate that certainly, but if you are someone who falls in that range, or you have been, I think we can all say that, anyone who's listening to this probably has either spent their whole life in that environment, this post 1970s chemical environment, or a good chunk of it. And so let's look at the results. Look at people pre 1970 and how they looked. Were they thinner? Were they healthier? Did they look younger? Some say yes, some say no. I think we can all agree that the obesity rates pre 1970 were much, much lower. I mean, that's just a statistical fact. And then today we have an obesity crisis. Now, the solution seems to be let's just find a drug to take care of it. And I heard a couple of doctors speaking and the other day, and I thought, this is a good point. And the point is, if you are at a critical point, like if you are morbidly obese and your comorbidities are such that you are about to have a stroke, a heart attack, a diabetic, you know, a fallout, you're going to have some type of cancer that's going to develop, then getting the weight off is going to be something healthy. But there are a lot of side effects to Ozempic and Wegovy and GLP-1 drugs and all that kind of stuff. And so it's not a magic bullet and it's not a magic pill and it can't be licensed to eat junk food, right? We have to kind of look at this in a way. I was in the grocery store yesterday, and you're going to probably find this funny. I found it funny. And this beautiful woman came up to me. She was older. I think she was older than me, maybe my age. Anyway, she looked at a bag of candy and she turned it around. She said, "Wow, 21 grams of sugar. That's a lot of sugar." And we were standing in the candy aisle, and I thought, that's what this aisle is all about, right? So this is not where you go to find your healthiest foods. Now, getting back to Dr. Lee's book on page 109 and continuing on all the way to page 117, he makes a case for the Mediterranean diet. Now, I'm going to go back to my original question, which is there something magical about this region? Well, one of the things that we know about this region, it is flush with vegetation, it's flush with, fish. Like, so there is a bounty of different types of foods. Now, one of the things he points out, which I think is really, really key, is that there are several countries that circle the Mediterranean and their cuisines are not all the same. They do have some common similarities, but they're not all the same. So I think that's point one that's really important because I think sometimes we're just looking for a prescription to eat. And if you fall into that category, then I would challenge you to kind of wipe that concept out of your mind because the world changes, the environment changes, nature changes. So I think our bodies are designed to deal with change. All right. Sometimes our minds resist it, sometimes our wills resist it. But change is an inevitable thing. It's going on right now, right? So for where I am and in North America, we have spring right now. So we had no leaves on trees, now we have leaves on trees. We had no flowers, and now we have flowers. And these will die, and these will change. And we have to come to peace with that because if we don't, then you're literally fighting against what is natural. And you're not going to win, right? We're not going to win against that argument for sure. So let's also use that and apply it in our foods. One of the big things, and look, I want to give you the parts of this book that I think are really important. I'm taking it page by page. I am by no means reading the book to you, so I encourage you to read it. I'm not going to go study by study. Obviously, if he's making a case for the Mediterranean diet, there are many, many studies that he quotes to the letter. He gives you how many participants. He gives you all of the statistics. He tells you how the study was conducted, and all of the outcomes were basically the same. That the people who were on a Mediterranean diet lost the most weight, with a couple of stipulations. One is that there was caloric restriction, and so a diet is considered 1,200 calories, which I think is sort of weird because I guess they had to pick a number, but every body is different, right? So your age, your sex, your weight to start with. So, this, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe just every human being should be able to consume the same amount of calories. I just know personally that my 6'5" son can eat me under the table. And so he should, because there's just more body for him to give nutrients to. So I think in a way it's important for us to look at size and age and sex because we're all different. And those are important factors. Um, so having said that, for a study, they have to have some fixed variables. So he does talk a little bit about all of the variables. If that's something that's important for you to read, for you to feel confident to move forward to the next chapter, then I recommend that you actually stop watching the podcast until you read the studies. Because I think to move forward in this book in any effective way, you have to really believe certain things. So I titled this chapter or this podcast, Food Myths and Mythology. And we have a lot of food myths. Like, I remember when I was a kid, there was this big joke like, okay, we're going out for Chinese food, but you better have a snack in the car because you're going to be hungry afterwards. Because it's like not enough food or it's too, I don't even understand. As food, Chinese food is so amazing, and I lived in China for a long time. I mean, to me, no one will feed you more, and you will not walk away from any other table feeling more full than an Asian table, than a Chinese table. But having said that, maybe different people had different experiences. All these little myths come out of some truth, but I will share with you it is a myth that actually what they found was that eating a Chinese meal is going to, a traditional Chinese meal is going to make you feel more satiated, happier, and more fulfilled than if you were to eat processed foods with empty nutrition, right? So, one of the things that happens when we eat is if we're not getting the nutrition we need, our bodies say, yep, you're still hungry because I didn't get it. I might have gotten sugar and I might have gotten some kind of carbohydrate or some chemical that made me feel good, but I didn't get what I was looking for. So keep eating, keep eating. And that's why you can eat the whole bag of potato chips. That's why you can sit down and eat a box of cookies. And that's why you can sit down and eat a bag of candy, popcorn, all of those things, because there's not enough nutrition in there to signal to your body that you've gotten what you need. So you just keep eating. So beware before you grab that bag of something processed, you probably don't have a chance. It's going to win and it's going to want you to completely finish it, and maybe ask for more. So that's probably not going to set you up for success. So, number one, he says, find the foods that are in season, find foods that are fresh, find foods that you can prepare. Yeah. So, this is sort of anti-modern thinking. The idea is, we want everything quick, we want everything ready. He's saying, nope, you really want to prepare your own foods. Prepare your foods, and not only prepare your foods, take time to eat them and sit down with in the company of another person and eat your foods. That all of this will contribute to longevity and health. Now, I realize sometimes people live alone, and sometimes people have to work through a meal, and sometimes people are on the go because their kids have activities and sports and things like that. So, what can you do to adapt a modern lifestyle to those things? Like, what could you do? Could you, yeah, maybe have a meal in the car with your kids, but try to prepare something that's somewhat easy, but also like whole food based instead of doing a drive-through. That could be one solution. Get your kids involved in the preparation. Like if you want a whole bunch of fresh fruits and vegetables as snacks, then have your kids, contribute to the chopping and the food prep and the meal prep. Find some time to do some meal prep so it doesn't feel panicky and rushed every time you're about to put things together and go on to the next thing. And that includes people who have to bring a meal to work. That includes people who work really late, who feel too tired to cook when they get home. Sometimes just rearranging your eating times, also just having that food prep is really, really important to get seasonal and traditional preparation in. And that's what he says, seasonal and traditional preparation. And seasonal and traditional preparation doesn't have to be like artisanal gourmet 3-hour cooking. It can be something as simple as like braising in broth or in water, or which maybe would take 5 or 10 minutes as opposed to popping something in a microwave, which can damage the food, or an air fryer. Like we want to stay away from, he talks a lot about staying away from fried foods and staying away from grilled foods, that those high intensity heats, he feels are really detrimental to the food. And if you can cook at lower, slower temperatures, you're going to see better results in the food, which totally makes sense to me. Please give me your comments if you disagree. And because I'm always interested in hearing another point of view, and I'm sure he would be too. So, other myths about food, and I think all of those are myths about food. I don't have time. Um, there's no one to eat with. There's no way to make it social. There's no way to fit into the parameters in a modern world. And I think that's a myth. Myths about certain cuisines, that they're good for you, they're not good for you. They don't have enough meat, they have too many fats. I think olive oil should be by now vindicated from any dark spell that people had about it. I've even heard like definitely cook with it, saute your foods in it. They've been cooking with olive oil for thousands of years and they've heated it and it's definitely proved to be beneficial. So that seems to be a myth, the two that I think we can get off the table. Um, I love fruits and vegetables because I think they're the fastest food that we have. Um, you know, I would rather see someone eat a banana than a chocolate bar, right? Unless it's a dark chocolate bar, then by all means, eat that 80% dark chocolate. That's great. Or that powdered cacao, heat it up with maybe some cayenne pepper, cinnamon, make it delicious. Throw in some coconut milk or something, other than that. And make sure it's free of things like carrageenan and polysorbate 80, these things that increase the mouthfeel of your foods when they remove the fats. So just beware when you see a fat-free food that had fat in it before, like yogurt, and they're trying to increase the protein, right? The protein increase is good, but what they had to put into the yogurt to create that mouthfeel is going to be bad. So look at your yogurt and make sure it has as few ingredients as possible. And if you have to eat a lower fat version, just eat the lower fat version. It's fine. I mean the higher fat version. It's fine. Eat it as a whole food. That's going to be the better way to go. The other thing he talks a lot about, which I think we forget sometimes, is this idea of moderation. Just be more moderate with your meals. Eat on smaller plates. He talks a lot about that too. He says he loves the idea of like sharing and appetizers because it gives you a variety of foods. One of the things I love is tabbouleh, and I think it's so great because parsley to me was a garnish when I was a kid growing up, or it was like something you sprinkled on something. And I love that the Mediterraneans have said, no, it's the basis of a dish, right? Like we're gonna build a dish around parsley. I think that's so cool. And just think how good you'd feel after, eating a whole bunch of parsley, or for that matter, cilantro. Chop up that cilantro, throw in some onions, throw in some tomatoes, keep it small. All of a sudden you have a very healthy dip, and you can throw some vinegar in it if you want. So there's like lots of fun, easy things to do. And I think in the book he's going to get into some of the recipes. So like I said, I didn't want to quote every study. I thought that would be really, really boring. And even though I love science, and I know some of you love science too, if you're interested in the research, and he takes it from all over Europe, all over Asia, all over these countries, even from America, people have come and studied this diet. And he really does build a very good case for eating like Mediterranean peoples and Asian peoples eat. So he has me very convinced because I feel like the studies he presented were solid and very well done and over long periods of time and good results. So the biggest takeaways were things like you don't end up feeling hungry, which I think is really important, right? None of us wants to feel like we're hungry all the time. I have to say, I'm in my 2020, 25, I'm in my fifth year of a fasting lifestyle. And what kind of is positive and sad for me is I don't feel hungry anymore. So I used to go through these long periods of fasts and I actually felt that like pit in my stomach. And to me, that was like, oh, I'm losing weight, right? Because I'm feeling like hollow, but that's not weight loss. But it is psychologically, I don't know, there's some benefit there. Um, but that like, oh, I'm hungry, I really want to eat. And then you have to kind of like white knuckle it through or pray yourself through it, right? Like, how do I get through these moments so I can eat again? Now I don't have that anymore because I'm metabolically stable. Thank you. That's wonderful. But so what's the sign that this is happening? So for longer fasts, what I found is that I start to get a little bit fuzzy until I go into my ketones. So I'm also finding that longer fasts may not be as beneficial for me to do on a regular basis. But again, playing with the fasting lifestyle can be very, very beneficial. And, in the Mediterranean, they all have cultures that espouse a fasting lifestyle. They all have cultures that espouse, limited intake, right? So put your food on a plate, look at it, look at the portion size, and say, okay, when this is gone. That's it, right? Instead of kind of dipping your spoon into the big bowl again and just keep adding and adding and adding. Because sometimes it takes 20 minutes for your body to feel full. And so you can overeat really easily. The Japanese have, I think women especially have a practice of 80%, right? So they just eat 80%. And I guess they put the rest of it away for later. And I think that's a good way to live. And then lastly, I love this way he ends on page 117, this section. He says, for every serving of whole fruit that people consume per week, right? Per week, there was a 3% increase in the odds of maintaining their weight reduction. So, like, if you're at a healthy goal weight, if you've been with me going on this longevity journey for many years and you hit your goal weight like I did, you can maintain it. You're not going to yo-yo if you increase your fruit, whole fruit. That's easy. That's fast food. I love that. All right. And lastly, I just wanted to wrap up our time together with a little bit of information about, of course, some doTERRA products. And the one that I wanted to talk about today is, I'm just going to pull up some notes, so bear with me for 1 second. Oops. Okay, I'm going to try one more time. No, okay, and that's just that. We're going to go right into talking about this, which is these two products, DDR Prime and frankincense capsules. Why do I mention these? Because when he talks about maintaining good amounts of fat on your body, converting white fat to brown fat, when he talks about longevity foods, when he talks about dealing with feeling full, fighting cancer growth, things like that. These two products are ideally formulated for all of those goals. Now, it used to be that I would take this every day. Now they came up with this frankincense capsule. This is my go-to every day. When I start to feel like my health is on the decline, or I'm not getting enough sleep, or I've been exposed to someone who's sick, or there's a lot of stress, I add this. All right. Now, if I were at a state of like acute illness, I would take this one capsule 5 times a day, and I would do taking this one capsule 5 times a day. For me, 5 times a day is this like weird magic thing when it comes to essential oil-based product. So that's just my experience of the last 20 years, coming up on 20 years. August 5th is going to be 20 years. Can you imagine in this world? So, anyway, those are my two suggestions. If you're not taking this every day, you may want to consider taking it every day just because of how it plays into all of the good stuff that Dr. Lee says that we should be getting into our diet. Now, next week, we're going to talk about getting started with your Mediterranean way. Thanks so much for joining me. And remember, here's to living your best and longest life. I will see you on the next episode of Radical Age Reversal.